Yeah, thank you, Sean. That's excellent. What about me? That's the question that's posed right at the top of the little pamphlet. Every day, people with a learning disability, autism, or acquired brain injury face difficulties with other people's attitudes. It's about other people, isn't it, Agnes, Lunny? The way people deal with folk. People's inhumanity to people.
Yeah.
And you deal with it every day of the week. So in your Positive Futures program. And
Yeah.
you're welcome, Jean, as well.
Thank
You're
you.
one of the folks supported by Positive Futures.
I am indeed,
Isn't
yeah.
it great?
Yeah,
Great
it's
to
great.
have them there. So listen, tell me the bottom line stuff about Positive Futures.
Okay. Positive Futures is a voluntary organisation. We were established in 1995, and I guess ever since our inception, our key focus has been around our belief that people with a learning disability are equal citizens, and as equal citizens have the same rights and should have the same opportunities as everybody else.
But is
So
that
I
not
guess-
is that not a given that of course they have equal rights, of course they're equal with everyone
Yes.
else? Have we not arrived at that stage of the 21st century?
We have.
where
Yeah.
people are been
Yeah.
dealt with
Yeah,
appropriately.
yeah. I absolutely agree with you, Rowan. We have arrived at that place. It's written down, and the books will tell you some wonderful things about the
Yeah.
theory. But sadly, there's a big gap between what's in theory and what's in law and what's in practice. Now, we're not for 1 minute saying that every day people who we support and their families experience discrimination. That's not the case. But what we're saying is it's happening all too often. And what we're saying is people with a learning disability, if we're talking about real citizenship, we're talking about rights, we're talking about choice, we're talking about control. And if that is really what our focus is on, then we need to be organising ourselves. We need services and supports to be delivered in such a way that people actually do get choice and actually do have control over their lives. And I think there's a lot of lip service paid, to those principles.
I kind of sense that. And Jean Hale, you're supported by Positive Futures. What's your story of learning disability, Jean?
My story of learning disability, I have a mild learning disability. So I got a wee job a voluntary job in a wee second-hand shop where I was treated very badly.
Really?
I was made stay in the back of the room steaming clothes. When I did ask to go up to the front of the shop, she says, "No, you're good enough at the job that you're at the moment."
But I would have thought you would have been a treasure in the front of the shop, for goodness sake, because you bring so much. You bring so much of your own skills, your own happiness, your own joy of living to the front
Yeah.
of the shop. And do you think that happens quite a lot, Jean?
I do, yes, because when I was younger, when I started going for jobs, when I left school, every time you mentioned on the forms you have a learning disability, you said no, not that, you just kept trying.
But that's not supposed to be the case, Agnes, because as you were saying, it's written down that shall not happen.
Yeah.
But it's maybe more prevalent than you actually believe
Yeah.
that it is happening.
I mean, I think the truth is we can have legislation and we can have policy, but the key to all of this is implementation. And unless the implementation of policy and legislation is carefully monitored, and unless there are people there gatekeeping, how do we know what's going on? And we have this campaign that we launched back in the beginning of April. We've had the opportunity and the privilege of being hosted by local councils, and actually we were here in Newry a couple of weeks ago. But every event has had an opportunity there for someone who we support to tell their story. And the stories range from Jean's story of just being refused the opportunity to come and work front of house, which she's well capable of and is now doing, thank God.
Yeah.
Yeah.
With the different attitude from a different manager. She's now working in front of the shop. You open the shop. And
I opened the shop, and
doing
count the
cashiers
money,
and all that
cash
kind
up.
of stuff. So Jean is very capable of doing that. So it's Jean's story. We started off the campaign with the story of a young woman who is now 15 years of age, who's been excluded from school for the last 2 years. She has...
How does a young woman of 15 find herself excluded from school?
Yeah. Well, that's a question that we struggled with as well. And in fact, we thought when we were asked to support this young woman, that this was a unique situation. But sadly, it's not. We've been supported by a number of parents across Northern Ireland who find themselves in the same situation. And really it is to do with the particular issues that people within the autistic spectrum face, and those issues and how they present in terms of behaviours, and really how that then needs to be managed.
Yeah.
And the bottom line is that, I don't think for 1 minute that teachers aren't caring and considerate and want to do a good job for their pupils, but it doesn't appear from what we hear, that teachers are properly supported and trained to do their job. So this is a young woman at 13 who was excluded not from one school but from 2 schools. You know what that means when your daughter, who's supposed to be at school, is at home, is mum had to give up work. I mean, where is that child's right to an education? I mean, the law says not only a right to an education.
And why did they exclude her?
Because they couldn't cope with her behaviours. Because as a person within the autistic spectrum, she had particular issues, she had particular challenges.
Yeah.
Rather than understanding those challenges and getting training and support to help teachers and classroom assistants cope better, the only solution is exclusion.
But sure, if they'd kept the child in the school, the entire school population would have grown in wisdom and in enjoyment of life, in coming to terms with what her special way of behaving was, and everyone would grow from it.
Yeah. Well, I think what you've described is the world that we set out to develop and vision back in 1995, and it's a world that I think we are making some headway in, creating a world that is about acceptance. It's about acknowledging that every one of us has gifts and talents. Every one of us.
But you're the
has
victim of the lowest, of the weakest link in the chain. Anyone can come along at any time and be prejudicial in attitude and pull the whole edifice of caring down. It happened to you, one person, you know, and that one person is perhaps not unique.
But the reality, Rowan, is, you know, so we can talk about the experience that Jean has, which is a horrible experience for Jean, and she now talks with great pleasure about the fact that that has now been overcome for her. But the feeling of not being welcomed, the feeling of being excluded, being told you're not wanted here. I mean, can any of us think what that might feel like for us?
Oh yeah, it can certainly.
And that is the reality of it. Now, what we're saying very clearly as part of this campaign is, we don't believe for 1 minute that people get out of bed in the morning and think, who can I hurt today? Who can I be cruel to today? Who can I do a disservice to?
Is it people being lazy? Is it people being ill-informed? Is it people not wanting to take the bother?
Yeah, I think, I wouldn't even use the term lazy, because that sounds almost like people are aren't bothered. I think it is a lack of understanding. I think it's people have not had the opportunities to really, because for so long, the people who we support in our organisation were people who were out of sight and out of mind.
Of course.
People who were supported in hospitals, in long-stay hospitals, who weren't ill, people who were in residential and nursing homes, who didn't need to be in residential nursing homes, people who were locked away from society. So I suppose it's a big ask in the last 25 years to think that suddenly there's an acceptance. And I do think we've come a long way in people being accepted, but we have a long, long way to go. I mean, the issues are diverse. Yesterday at the City Hall in Belfast, we heard from a young woman who had herself to leave school. And that's the other bit. Who excludes? Is it a voluntary thing? Because if I'm not happy somewhere, am I going to continue to go? Is my mum and dad going to continue to send me to somewhere that I'm not welcome?
It's constructive exclusion, isn't it?
But if
they work on it.
The environment and the situation isn't made right for you, what choice do you have? And this is a young woman who's had 3 strokes, who just couldn't manage to walk up and down the stairs. Well, there's no lift in the place she was in. She had to leave. And it's simple things like that. I mean, some people just from the business world were saying, what can we do? And we're saying very simple things. And the other thing is a story of a man who we support in Lisburn. We've had an older carers project now for the last 2 years, supported by Big Lottery. And this is about supporting older carers of people with a learning disability, because we should be celebrating in 2014 the fact that people with learning disability are now living longer.
Of course.
This is a fantastic development. But the other side of that is their mums and dads are also getting older. And the caring has gone on since the person was born in many instances. But we have a dad of 82 supporting a daughter of 52. Mum died a couple of years ago. Dad's biggest problem is finding social opportunities that his daughter will be happy with. He doesn't come to Belfast anymore with his daughter, which is something he and his wife did regularly. Not because he doesn't want to come to Belfast, not because he doesn't have a car, not because he can't walk. His daughter can't walk. His daughter uses a wheelchair. But if his daughter needs to go to the toilet, he can't go with her. There are no changing rooms for adults.
My goodness.
And this is something that's really important, and he has to stop strangers in the street if his daughter needs to go to the toilet. Now think about that for a minute. We cannot continue to have a society that excludes people in these ways that are not about, it's not about deliberate exclusion. But when I was talking to the business community yesterday, I knew that a lot, sort of light bulbs were going on. People were thinking for the first time.
Yeah, for the first time about it.
I suppose what we're saying is people are just not thinking. But I suppose our argument in Positive Futures has always been, just put yourself in the shoes of the person who has these support needs.
Jean, I want to put myself in your shoes.
Okay.
What's it like, Jean, being excluded in this way? What's it like being put to the back of the shop? What does it do to you as a human being?
Well, it just made me feel very, very down and wasn't worthy, and, you know, wasn't appreciated what I can do.
But it didn't break you.
No, it didn't break me because I had
Good
support and
girl.
positive features.
Yeah, but you also had your own innate support. You're,
Yeah.
you're a strong woman yourself.
Yeah, I'm strong, yeah.
Yeah, because if you've got challenges in life, then you will develop strength to deal with them.
Yeah, I've went through an awful lot of challenges in my life, but, you know, it's just because positive features has really supported me and encouraged me to,
Yeah,
you know, stick at it.
yeah.
Do you want to tell everyone about what you do recently, been recently doing in Positive Futures?
What was that?
Your role on the board?
I am enrolled in the advisory board and the trustees meetings as well.
Wow. And what do you do on the board? And,
We advise the board members what, you know, different issues, what we can do, you know.
so you're telling them what they need to know about
Yes,
your
about-
requirements?
Yeah, well, we speak up for people that can't speak for themselves.
Wow. That's an almost sacred calling to be able to do that.
Yeah,
And you go in and you stand up and you talk.
well, we sit and talk.
And you sit and talk. That's because you're sensible. You sit and talk.
An expert by experience, and that's the reality
Yeah,
of it. You know, Jean
yeah.
knows what it's like to live with a learning disability.
Absolutely.
And that's her area of expertise. I
When did
can't
you
talk-
first discover, Jean, that you had a learning disability? And how did you discover it?
I discovered it in primary school.
Really?
For,
And how did it show? How did it?
It showed because the teacher just pushed me to the back of the class, wouldn't show me anything, learn me anything. I wasn't able to read and write at 11. So
well,
they sent me to a boarding school.
My goodness.
So I stayed there till I was
What-
17.
What
16.
a teacher. My
I know.
goodness. Well, I can tell you a story. I identify with you because I wasn't put to the back of the class at primary school. I was brought to the front of the class and I was made to stand up and another fellow made to shake hands. And the teacher said, "Witness Wood meeting Wood. Stupidity meeting stupidity." Well, the other fellow shook my hand. He went on to be the head of one of the major oil companies of the world. And I went on to be head of BBC Northern Ireland's journalism. So we all grow in different ways and
We do,
at
don't we?
different paces, don't we?
Yeah.
How do you feel now about your abilities and your learning?
Well, my abilities now, the whole self-confidence is all way up now. I'm not depressed as much now.
Yeah. And of course, that's the other thing. It brings you once people do this to you, it brings your health down. You
It
begin
does.
to become depressed.
Yeah.
Were you on medication and stuff like that?
Yes, I'm on the medication.
You would
Yeah.
still be, yeah.
Yeah, I'm still on
That
medication.
helps you, yeah?
It does, uh-huh.
Yeah. But the best medication of all is the sunlight and the blue sky.
Yeah.
And if you can remember that, you'll be
And
you'll
seeing
be
your
doing
support
very well.
workers' face as well makes you
Your
smile
support
as
work.
well.
Yeah. And how does that work, if you would think about that? Seeing a support worker's face, is it one-to-one contact?
It is, uh-huh.
And those people would come, Agnes, and they would have individuals that they team with almost and work with on a one-to-one basis.
I suppose the thing that Positive Futures has done from the very beginning is we're very clear that getting the right support is not this thing about, you know, the one size fits all.
Yeah.
And from 1995 we were clear that every single one of us is unique. And therefore what suits you and what works for you doesn't work for me.
Okay, yeah.
So the focus in
Yeah.
our organisation is what we call in the business a person-centred approach.
Yep.
Which is we get to know people like Jean, and we find out what gifts and talents Jean has, what her hobbies and interests are, and we try and match that up with a member of staff who has
Yeah.
similar gifts and talents and hobbies and interests. But we also look at what does Jean need to have a fulfilled life. And when we met Jean, and I hope you don't mind me saying this, Jean, I think you've already said this to Rowan, you know, Jean wasn't in a good place. She had a lot of difficult issues and a lot of challenges. So there was a lot of that kind of support needed to help build Jean's self-confidence. But it took very little to get to see the strengths that Jean actually has and the gifts and talents. And that's our experience across the country.
Yeah. But your work,
Getting the right support is what the key is.
but your work seems to me to be twofold. One, you're doing this directly for the folk you support.
Yes.
But perhaps, certainly of equal importance, perhaps of greater importance, is your work out there lobbying, changing attitudes, talking to business, talking to councils, all that kind of thing.
Yeah.
Now, if you can't stem the flow of ignorance at that level, you're going to be firefighting with the genes of this world for all the time to come.
Yeah, yeah.
So is sort of the legislature of the land beginning to change and take note?
There is no doubt it is. And I think, you know, I don't want to paint a picture of Northern Ireland that is an unwelcoming place. It certainly is not an unwelcoming place. But I think what we can't do is sit back on our laurels and say, we're doing all right. You know, we've got to recognise that life is for living for everybody.
Yeah.
And if there are barriers, and there are barriers, in the way and challenges being faced by people which can be removed, then we in Positive Futures want to do our very best to remove those barriers, but not in a blame way.
No,
We're
but
not about blaming people.
Have
We're
you
about-
not? Have you not got the right to expect now, at this
Yeah.
stage of our development as a people,
Yeah.
that there will be people within organisations, within industry, within business, who will automatically, because they know it's the right thing to do, will automatically be doing the job that you feel you should be doing, that you have your emissaries in there.
Yeah, yeah. That's, I think I said this earlier, that is the vision for Northern Ireland that we set out to carve back in 1995. And I think we have made some progress. There's other organisations out there doing similar work to ours. But I think the reality is we need to just keep reminding people of not just people's rights, but their responsibilities. And I think, you know, we know that lots of these things are written in law, lots of these things are written in policy, but as I said in the very beginning, who is gatekeeping? Who is asking Jean what her experience has been? Who is talking to education and library boards? Who is looking and saying, what are we doing around older carers? I mean,
Well, who is doing it?
well, who is doing it?
Who?
Well,
Tell me.
Well, Positive Futures, for a start, is doing
Yeah.
it. But, you know, we've got to also recognise that we all have responsibility. Government has a responsibility. I mean, one of the saddest things I've heard in recent years is a parent who stood up at an event that we were running a couple of years ago now and said that the last thing he thinks about at night is he wishes that his daughter dies in her sleep. Now, this is someone who's an older person who cannot bear to think what the future holds if he is not there to support his daughter.
I understand that.
Now, this is 2014, and I've repeated that earlier today. It's 2014, and I think it's a very sad indictment on our society if we have people across this country whose last wish at night is for their sons and daughters to be dead because they cannot bear to think about what the future holds.
They don't trust society
There's no planning.
to
Well, there
look
is no
after.
proper planning for the future for people. There isn't the kind of service choice that people want, support choice people want. And what we're saying is you will not get it right until such times as you treat people as individuals. Because, you know, we need to get individual solutions. We need to get the support right. And when you get that right, things fall into place.
Yeah. I think you're being overly kind to the legislators and others when you're saying you're not saying that they're all bad or they're not.
Yeah.
It's not bad, but there is a badness within not caring enough. And clearly they're not caring enough if that man exists, and there are countless others like him.
Is it apathy? Do you know, Mumford and Sons wrote a song, and one of the lines in the song was, "If only I had an enemy bigger than my apathy, I would have won." I think there's something about apathy here. You know, it's people. We want businesses, we want community groups, we want those organisations who you know, provide a richness in our society to be saying, "Am I doing the very best I can do to include the most marginalised?" You know, what about people with learning disability? That's why we call the campaign "What About Me?" What about people with learning disability? What about people with autism? What about people with acquired brain injury?
And to do
what
these
about people with
things,
additional
and to
needs?
do these things as naturally as their next breath.
Yeah.
That it
'Cause
doesn't
the
have
bottom
to be a
line
big
is,
deal.
if we get things right for the majority of people, we can all access it.
Yeah.
Do you know, if we get a platform on a bus that moves up hydraulically, then we can all get on that bus. But if we start, you know, designing things around a particular need, we're going to exclude people. I suppose what we want is a society that we can all access, but access equally.
I remember years ago, it was an English model where people with learning disabilities were educated in the same class as people with different kind of learning issues. But, you know, we would say wrongly the normal and those who are not normal within society. But everyone was in there together, and all were growing together. You know.
And there's loads of examples of inclusive education in Northern Ireland, and loads of examples of where people are being supported really very, very well and having really good lives. But we want that for everybody. We don't want that to be the lucky few.
On a scale of 1 to 10, 1 being dreadful, 10 being excellence, where are we in the caring of folk with learning disabilities?
I think there are some fantastic examples of best practice in Northern Ireland, and that's something also that I regret at times, is that we continue to look to other pastures. You know, the field is always greener somewhere else. I think there's some fantastic examples of best practice where people are receiving the very best support to have great lives. It's not everywhere in Northern Ireland, but I think it's incumbent upon us, you know, in government and in other, you know, public bodies to look at the best practice in Northern Ireland and to actually begin to roll that sort of practice out rather than to continue to do what we've always done, because we're getting results that we know aren't working for people. So we need to change that, and we need to get results that do work.
Where do people find you?
Our head office is in Bangor, but we have offices right across Northern Ireland. We've one here in Newry, in Savages Terrace in Newry, but we have, as I say, 11 offices across Northern Ireland, from Bangor to Lisnaskea to Newry, back over to Omagh.
And what's you have a website, have you?
We do, yes.
It's you've Facebook.com
Yeah,
/positivefutures95.
yeah.
So that's Facebook.com /positivefutures95. And what about the website? Where do they find you on
The
it?
website is positivefutures.net.
Well, that's easy, isn't
Yeah.
it? Positivefutures.net.
And we have a Twitter account, so if you want to comment and get engaged in, you know, issues like these, we'd really be very happy to hear from you.
I'm too old. I'm personally too old to have got involved in Twitter. Anyway, I can't use enough words. You're limited.
140 characters.
Oh my God.
Speaks the Luddite who can't turn on a computer, but I have good people around me who can.
You're great. You're good. You're good. Listen, Agnes, thank you for coming in.
Thank
That
you
was
very
wonderful.
much. Thank you very much,
indeed.
Ron.
And
for your
Jean,
time.
thank you.
Thank you.
Bless you. Go well. Take care.
There you go.